Thank you, Jaan, and Matsuo-san for coming here. The last time we had a conversation like this, you had a conversation like this, I'm more like a fly on the wall, was 2.5 years ago at the Starship offices in Tallinn, just before the pandemic really took off. And a lot has changed since then for the world and for us. And I'm very happy to be here to moderate this conversation between you. And just for the audience, a couple of words, and you can introduce yourself in more detail. We have here, all the way from Estonia, Jaan Tallinn, who is an engineer, a physicist, investor, entrepreneur, and one of the world's experts on AI and AI risk and existential risk. And he's the co-founder of Skype and co-founder of Center for Existential Risk in Cambridge and Future of Life Institute in Cambridge, Massachusetts, so 2 Cambridges. And then next to me, I have the esteemed professor Matsuo Yutaka from Tokyo University, runs his own Matsuo Lab, one of the prominent AI labs in Japan and known worldwide, and very much appreciate you all being here.
Thanks for having us.
Today the way we want to structure this to start from the very practical, current use cases, success stories in utilizing machine learning and AI, and working our way up all the way to AI risk and existential risk. So that's what I mean under a big bang. So let's get things started. So maybe let's start with the very, very basic thing that we see and everybody sees all around our media kind of space, which is that it seems that often people are labeling everything as AI these days. AI this and AI driven, and kind of the same what I was explaining earlier about climate tech or sustainable transformation. There's a lot of kind of labeling which is not necessarily true. So, but we see things from simple, regression analysis to tools like GPT-3 to something more complex. And I would like to just start by asking, how do you evaluate the many faces of AI landscape today among tech companies? Maybe Matsuo-san, you want to start first?
Okay. First of all, thank you for having me today. And actually, the visiting Estonia.
Maybe closer.
Okay. Visiting Estonia 2.5 years ago was my last trip abroad before the COVID-19. So, yeah, I'm very honored to be here. And answering to the Rhino-san's questions, I think many people are not familiar with yet, but foundation models like GPT-3 is very, very powerful. And you can see many demos online. You can generate sentences. You can translate many languages. You can summarize everything. So it's quite amazing. And larger and larger models come up, and GPT-3 has the 165 billion parameters, which is quite big. But in this month, the Google released the new model called Palm, which has 580 billion parameters. So it can even explain why a joke is interesting, given some joke. So it's quite amazing. So I think such a huge rapid progress of recent AI technology is not recognized by many people, but it will sooner or later impact our society, our business.
Thank you. Jaan, you are an investor in many AI companies. How do you see the landscape?
Yeah, I do think that there's like a obvious like pressure to be fashionable when you're kind of preaching to investors, etc. So like Excel spreadsheets get like rebranded as AI. In so-called rationalist community that I'm like a little bit part of, there is this sort of thought experiment or protocol called taboo the word. Basically try to express what you just said without using a concrete word, and I think it's very useful to kind of sometimes say that. It's like, okay, you're talking AI this, AI that, okay, let's not use the word AI. What do you actually do? And for myself, I think I find it quite useful sometimes to replace the word AI with kind of more general, but I think also more scalable concept of automated decision making. So it's that kind of covers everything from like Excel macros to potentially kind of superhuman AI, and both highlights the opportunities, which means that we can, by delegating our decisions to automated decision makers, we can kind of potentially achieve better outcomes in terms of more competent decisions in various domains. On the other hand, as every leader knows, whenever you delegate something, you're not going to get exactly what you wanted. So it's like it also highlights the problems. In fact, I do think that if you think about kind of the increasing competence, and there is no question about AI and automated decision making, if I would kind of follow my own protocol here, will only increase in competence. And the big problem is that currently we're using the incompetence. I think that the automated decision makers are not competent enough to control them. To give a simple example, the off button stops working once AI is aware that there is an off button and can basically see what happens if the off button is pressed. Then it immediately starts search over policy space and figuring out like what are the things. But basically it starts comparing the worlds where the off button is pressed or off button is not pressed. If it finds the off button pressed world better, then it actually tries to make sure that the off button will be pressed. And vice versa, if it finds that the better, which is more likely outcome, if it finds that it gets higher score if the off button is not pressed, it will try whatever it can to ensure that the off button is not pressed. So that's an illustration where kind of competence initially is something that we want, but at one point it's like, oh, we're not that competent, please.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. When we come to the use of automated decision making, to try the same method that you're just proposing, in larger corporations, Matsuo-san, what do you see as some of the challenges in actually implementing automated decision making in larger corporations? Maybe first in Japan and then globally?
Okay, I think in Japan, the companies are not prepared for the AI transformation, so their system are often separated and not integrated well, and database are not integrated, and important data is not captured. So the companies should first prepare for bringing AI. Then they should look at the business process and apply AI to the best position. Sometimes they just replace human effort to AI, but that's not effective. So revising, improving the entire business process is a necessary thing to do.
So one thing that I noticed is that, which is kind of obvious if you think about it, that the more competent AI systems you have, the less sort of demanding they are about the data. So for example, I've seen companies who are basically trying to increase the automation in the banking system in Europe, where there's like the PDF is a lingua franca. Like people are just like sending PDFs and archiving PDFs, etc. However, the interesting thing is that they're not like fully sort of well-defined. It's not a fully well-defined data, but it's like small domain. The domain is small enough that AI can basically, like with high reliability, to figure out what the actual underlying information is in those PDFs. So this is an example where kind of increased competence in AI reduces the need to have like very clean data protocols.
When you think about companies that are doing it right, or that are good at implementing, what are they doing right? Yeah, please. Yeah.
So one thing, I think the current AI, again, the current generation, which might change in 5 years, or like, because if you think about it, the current crop of the top impressiveness, like top, the AIs that are kind of get the most interest right now, most money right now, they are large language models. They are transformer based. Transformers were invented by Google Brain in 2017. So it's 5 years old. So like, if you think about it, like what might happen in 5 years, what's true now might not be even relevant in 5 years. But I think the current crop of AIs, their main value is kind of limited by the cost of mistakes that they make. So if there's AI that can 99% is got 99% good, then it's like super valuable in things like advertising or recommendations or things like that. But it's completely worthless in self-driving because like 1% is just too high cost to pay. So I do think that with the current crop of AIs, again, might not be true in 5 years, is that companies who kind of think about how they handle the fallbacks well, like how do they, like for example, self-driving, how do they have the human operator handover, do it reliably enough to handle the cases that AI can't handle. I think that they are better positioned to use the current crop of AIs.
So you mentioned Google. Obviously, Google has been very good in hiring talent from the very beginning of the foundation of Google, founding of Google. What kind of recommendations would you both have to corporations that are thinking about building their AI team? How should they go about thinking about how do they choose the right talent in a field that's so quickly evolving? Please.
Yeah. In Japan, we don't have many AI talented younger people. And actually, my lab is teaching every year 2,000 to 3,000 students, and they are taking my class for deep learning. And some gets very skilled engineers, and some of them make their own startups. But they don't want to go to the large companies for their job. So yeah, it is very important to have a right team for the large corporation, so that younger talented people can work and their talent, their skills are fully utilized. So they need a very good CDO or some kind of leadership, and also the good salary system. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's like one first question I would ask as an investor, which I usually do, is like, are you about kind of applying kind of existing AIs that have been kind of like shown to work to your domain, to a domain that you know about, and then like like if that's true, then kind of try to figure out like how well they actually know their domain, be it like manufacturing or self-driving or cars or whatever, or design, and then like see like how how well they can manage the combination of competences in this like domain-specific thing. Also robotics, obviously, like that's a big thing in Japan, and like the latest crop of and awareness about the latest crop of AI research. So that's like one category. The other category is like companies who actually try to advance the frontier of AI. And for them, the main thing I want is like, okay, I want safety people there. Like it's like, please, like it's really important to think about like if you're pushing things forward to like make sure that they're not going to go in the wrong direction. And also, it's very kind of I think the safety research that I've been kind of supporting for the last 10 years is more even. It can be like very interesting, and there again, I think the integration is very important. That you don't want to have like kind of safety, the technical safety people to be like kind of some silo that, like as Stuart Russell, who is like leading voice in academia about AI safety, says that like we don't have bridge building ethicists. Like no, bridge is something that kind of just works, that doesn't fall down. We don't have like separate ethicists to watch over the shoulders of engineers to make sure that the bridge doesn't fall down, right? So that's why I think safety should become integrated into companies that are trying to really push the boundaries.
Mm-hmm. When we think about positive examples, what are some of the developments in, let's say, automated decision making that you are excited about or interested in that could really benefit society? I don't know. Let's start with Matsuosa.
We have a startup called DeepX, which doing the autopilot for heavy machinery, and they control cranes and excavators using AI. So that the heavy machines can operate all through the night and also in the very dangerous places. So that is one example. Another example is it's not automated decision making, but analyzing Zoom videos. So recently, many companies doing sales online using Zoom, and analyzing the Zoom video, we can know what is the secret of the top sales people. And by analyzing the number of tones or the emotions or the intonations and something like that, we can know what is the secret of the top sales. And their finding is almost always we should smile more. So if you smile more, you can sell product more. So yeah, that is the automation of the sales analysis.
Okay. Yeah, like one interesting example that I think has like a lot of potential, and there's ultimately also a lot of risk, like AI, all AI kind of delegation processes. And I have a startup investment in an Estonian company called Pactum, pactum.com, I think. They are using AI to, or like, again, automated decision making systems to intermediate negotiations. So like the interesting thing about AI, one interesting thing about AI is that in some sense you can make it like much more trustworthy than humans, because like humans are kind of complex mess of incentives. And like our brains are like very kind of sensitive to various signals of like, oh, he had like a funny look. It's like, I don't know if I can trust that person to kind of be like neutral in this mediation process. Whereas AI, you can just like, you can publish the code and see like, oh, this is what's going to happen. So like they can be much more transparent, much more neutral, and kind of much more plausibly neutral. And I think that's an interesting area. But I think like more bigger interest of mine, which I think is a much harder challenge, is kind of AI in healthcare. I think the big challenge in AI healthcare, one is the kind of the huge cost of mistakes. But the other hand is just the healthcare system is not interested. Like just if we look at the incentives, the big problem is that like in healthcare, at least in Europe and US, I don't know, probably similar in Japan, is that sort of there are two types of customers. one customer that actually has the problem, and the other customer is the one that pays. So like in US, the insurance is the one that pays, and people are the ones that you're supposed to help, which means that in practice, the US healthcare system is basically the process of selling treatments to insurance, and people can kind of get better or worse as a result, but that's always a side effect. So that's a big problem. So in kind of like trying to, like, I have this like cynical view of like people, like startups who are trying to like implement AI in healthcare system is like, yeah, I already know what happens in 5 years. You're gonna be doing pharma marketing. But that said, I'm pretty enthusiastic about sort of what's the word? Quantitative self companies, basically companies or like also like dentistry and things like that where the payer is actually the end client. Because then you have this kind of honest feedback loop. Did you actually improve the outcomes? And like if you can kind of apply AI there, you could get like way better outcomes potentially. I mean, I could talk long about that, but I stop.
Maybe one thing that in addition on the same topic, since we do have, we have Panasonic, Honda, and Omron here. If you implement automated decision making, you're not only doing it because you want to be competitive, you want to help people. I hope, but also you need to be running a sustainable and a profitable business. So, how do you see some of these companies? What are good examples of like business economics of companies that are utilizing automated decision making, whether it's like gross margin or like low cost of errors, or how are you seeing it from a business standpoint?
It's a very difficult question. So there are two main directions of using AI. One is cost reduction, and other is value addition. And the cost reduction is sometimes easy because you can just calculate the amount of people needed for the job and replace that. But value addition is very difficult to design. But many of the successful AI use case is from that aspect. So sometimes, for example, you can design. You can make design for house, automate the designing the house. But the simple use is just a reduction of cost. But if you can use that AI system to find the best solution for the customer, that tends to be the value addition. So such kind of thing is very important, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would just like repeat what I said about kind of the cost of mistakes, and also like from the investor perspective, that quite often kind of stops me from investing, because quite often the demos they're sort of like worthless because they do not have any information about what realistic mistakes would look like in the field. For example, I have had dozens of user support chat companies, automation companies present to me. It's like, yep, it looks very nice, but I have no idea if it works because I'm not a customer trying to get like some problem solved. So in which case it's kind of important, like how do they handle the human handover again? So yeah, how do you handle, if you handle human handover well in a way that plausibly makes you still profitable, that's a very good position to be in. And the other thing is like how well you're positioned to this like really rapidly increasing competence of AIs.
Okay, let's talk about AI risk. Favorite topic. Maybe it's a good way to start, again, in a similar way, like in the very beginning. There is a lot of discussion about AI risk. And so maybe you could talk about, in the beginning, like what are some of the AI risks that you think are overrated, and then what are definitely underrated? What are the real risks, please?
Yeah. I think you need to kind of make a distinction between risks that are very likely, but fairly low impact. Like, I don't know, face recognition, just used. Face recognition in bad hands, that's a like super likely risk. But like the impact, like we're not going to die. Everyone's not going to die as a result of face recognition being misapplied. Whereas then like there's like the other category of risk, like risks from AIs that we don't have yet, and then they can go like to like sort of really sci-fi sounding places where like, I mean, one thing that I've been saying is that it's not really up to gorillas anymore what happens to gorillas, because humans decide what happens to gorillas. So we are really hard working on putting ourselves in the same position. So by symmetry, like the big problem that gorillas have is not that humans are hostile towards them, although some of them are, but mostly we're not. We're just like messing with their environment. We need their environment. We need the trees for buildings or whatnot. And the same thing might be about AI. Like once we have AI that is sufficiently powerful to start rearranging the environment here, like it's going to be very, very difficult with them. So in that sense, I think these risks that kind of sound more sci-fi, but like there's no logical counter argument to them, and they're just like ultimately really big in impact. I think they are just underappreciated because they are so counterintuitive. We have no experience with that, and yet they are so high impact. But that said, I totally kind of support sort of division of labor to have like people also work on face recognition and like fake news and kind of like synthetic media, stuff like that. That's totally going to happen. That's totally going to mess things up. But I think like, yeah, my own heart and kind of most efforts go into like trying to ensure that we're not going to have something really, really bad here.
Matsuo-san.
Yes, I think in 5 years, the AI risk is kind of overrated because the techniques are not matured enough. So using deep learning, we can do image recognition, but that does not affect a lot. So we set up a LC committee in Japanese Society of AI with Shiono-san, and we discussed much about that. But at that time, the people are not aware of the technical detail of AI, and they sometimes overrated the risk. But now I think the AI risks are underrated. As I said before, the foundation models like GPT-3 is so powerful. They can do almost everything on natural language processing. And maybe they will, for example, persuade people or, changing the political opinion of users or something like that. And so maybe that is so dangerous for our society. And in Japan, we recently have the law for the digital competition, and we are discussing about the transparency of the algorithm. But maybe we should have such kind of discussion worldwide. to maintain the safety.
Yeah, I'm also like very keen on kind of like cultivating sort of international discussion about kind of long-term AI future. First of all, I feel that's my kind of competitive advantage, because I am not coming from like Anglo-Saxon place, so I literally live between kind of like New York and Beijing, and kind of flight time is same. So I can try to kind of like get more people interested in trying to ensure that like the future of our species is going to be good.
Let's talk about the future of our species. So I'm happy, Matsuo-san, you mentioned 5 years. So recently, which was, what was this now, 10 days ago? Something like that. Google's AI engineer became a whistleblower, saying that one of their AIs had become sentient, and potentially is a danger to human society. And this particular one maybe yet not so dangerous. However, this AI was created 5 years ago, so the decisions were made 5 years ago, and only now it's become dangerous. So in that light, when we think about risk, and there are two aspects to my question. One is, really sci-fi. I would like to you to elaborate. What is the worst thing that can happen to humans if the worst AI risk is realized? And then, what can be done, and what is being done to prevent these things from happening?
I mean, there are worse things than extinction. so like literally, there could be like even worse things than everyone dying. But like they are just super unlikely, because like I'm not going there. It's the human utility function is a very narrow target in the space of utility functions. So like it's very unlikely that we're going to miss just a little. We're probably more likely to be missing by much more, in which case like we just die. The big concern like is the basically too big. But okay, just to continue what you just said about this Google engineers whistleblowing. I think the most important or interesting fact about isn't the objective question, was that thing conscious or not. The more interesting thing is about what does it tell you, what kind of news we're going to see now in AI. What are we going to see things? What are the things? They're not going to be like less interesting now. They're going to be more and more interesting, more and more kind of like, ooh, that's spooky. So like we should kind of start preparing for that now. And but yeah, like ultimately you can just like, I'm a physicist by background, so like I just look at like, okay, what do the laws of physics prevent AI to do? And like turns out that they don't prevent much. So for example, so yeah, this is like I kind of joke about it, but it's actually like joke like haha, not joke like haha. So is that like one can say that AI can have like multiple problems that it can cause. It can kind of give like unfair judgments in courtroom, but it also can turn off the sun.
Matsuo-san, what do you think are the worst case scenarios for AI risk?
Yeah, let me start with this. I think in several years or in a decade or two, how our brain functions is clarified. So we don't know how our brain is working to generate this kind of thought or speech, but maybe in the near future we can know how brain works in what way. And then we can demystify the consciousness. So we can know the mechanism of the consciousness. That means that we can build a machine with consciousness. So, so there should be intensive discussion what makes us special, because the human have consciousness, but the computers can have consciousness. And then there would be, very smart AI with consciousness, and implementing some reward system to that AI. Maybe it can operate autonomously. So the scenario Jaan just said would be realistic. So maybe we should have a good discussion before that happens.
Absolutely. One thing that I would kind of add is that I think it's important to distinguish competence from consciousness. Especially in China, I see a lot of confusion about it. Like, I think that this is the same thing. I think consciousness is something, like competence is very easy to define. It's just ability to reach goals, ability to do search in a policy space, figure out what the plans should be, which plan is better than the other one. Whereas consciousness is something that we are still very confused about. And it's possible that this is kind of relevant to competence, but like currently, I don't see a reason why a machine that's super competent must be conscious. Perhaps it could be, like, but the important thing about consciousness is this is the thing that kind of gives moral subject to it. So like this is like the reason why we have like ethics committees for animal experiments, for example, because we have like strong reason to assume that they're conscious. So I think it's like in some sense it's very dangerous to create machines that are conscious, because at some point, at that point, we really have to think about, okay, what is their well-being, how much we should value their well-being, just like we value the well-being of mice and other kind of subjects. But like, so we shouldn't hurry, like create consciousness, but we shouldn't also be kind of complacent, thinking that, oh, like we have already handled this case, that we're pretty sure that they're not going to be conscious, so they're not going to be dangerous. No, unconscious machines can totally be dangerous. I think that's my default scenario, that we're going to create machines that will not be conscious, but they will still be more competent than humans. They will have like better plans to prevent us from turning them off than we have done our plans to kind of like stop them.
They're better at planning than we are. So in that light, like last question before we turn to audience question is that, as the saying goes, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So there are a lot of tools out there, a lot of people out there. You can't tell people what to do, what not to do, but at the same time, we do want to have some alignment. And so can you talk a little bit about different steps, movements, projects that are contributing to building a global understanding of preventing AI risk from actually taking place? Yeah, please start.
I mean, yeah, that's what I've done a lot. Yes. So, yeah, there are kind of multiple kind of activities, agendas. Like one thing indeed that I've been kind of personally doing, especially before pandemic, I'm kind of hoping to restart it again, just kind of fly around in the world and try to kind of get people in different countries, different cultures kind of aligned with kind of understanding what the problem is, and then kind of have some kind of like principled approach to kind of start with some kind of soft declaration of intentions or something like that. So for example, there is this, I've been involved in the Future of Life Institute that I've co-founded. We prepared in 2017 so-called Asilomorph principles for AI, for beneficial AI. That just has like a lot of declarations, things like, I think the most intriguing one there was that we should be careful about AIs that can recursively self-improve. So like we should be trying avoid the situation where we think we're creating an AI, but we're actually creating an AI that creates an AI that creates an AI that creates an AI that we can't control. And then on the other hand, I was on the European high-level AI expert group that came up with like AI like European AI ethics guidelines. And also I've been, last time I was in China, talked to people there that have come up with a pretty good friend there. He came up with, was the principal designer behind Beijing AI principles, which are kind of, I think they're actually better than the European ones. I think I failed in Europe to a significant degree to include things kind of more forward-looking ones. But I think Beijing principles, although like kind of very soft law, they have like very good intent. So like I'm totally happy to kind of like kind of help Japan also think along those lines. And then like there are kind of more practical kind of regulatory steps. One kind of my favorite example, recent example is that last year there was a data center fire in Strasbourg, and the problem there was that the thing kind of burned to the ground because the firefighters could not switch off the data center. There was no off switch for the data center. The electricity was just there. They couldn't extinguish it. So when people say like, haha, we shouldn't worry about AI, we can just turn it off. Well, no, like we just don't have those switches for the data centers, at least in some places. So like this is like a look of obvious practical things to do for like regulators now to like think about how like just ensure that there's like a remote way to turn off data centers, or more kind of sophisticated ways to kind of audit or like improve the infra security. We don't want AI to hack into their own data center or neighboring data centers, because that's very plausible if you are building things on like unsecure OSs that humans hack into all the time, and then we kind of develop AIs specifically. We already developed AI specifically to do like fuzzing and kind of cyber attacks. So basically, and so have like some mundane homework on the infosec and infrastructure area that we already can do, and then like declare like this like long-term principles that we want the human species look like with AI in the future.
Matsuo-san, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I think that regulators should demand the transparency. Yeah. So the algorithm is hidden and very smart, dangerous AI can be developed. That is not healthy for the society. The technology should be transparent, and we can we should be able to discuss about that technology development. So,
thank you. So, thank you for the discussion, and I think we can turn to some audience questions. I think we had one mic, so yes, please. Maybe we can give one mic here to.
So, and definitely, thank you so much for the discussion, and just to maybe to simplify from our perspective as well, as many in the audience, we sit in the interesting positions, especially in the corporation, the open innovation and decision post for the future regarding AI. And one is, of course, like you mentioned, the risk and opportunities. There's a lot there. What would you, just for the audience here especially, what would you see that they should know? So maybe if you could highlight to what is your favorite channel of a news blog, what should they follow actively just to make sure that they're up to date and not forgetting, and just for the next seminar discussing AI and just to the next seminar. So actively educating themselves, because in Finland and Nordics we have the free of charge education service called Elements of AI. So you can take a course and educate yourself into AI. But what would you suggest for this audience specifically? What should they follow and maybe educate themselves?
Yes, so I think there are like just a lot of resources out there when it comes to educating yourself about the current capabilities of AI, and yeah, a lot of courses, various forums. So, but like, I don't think I'm very kind of like marginally or like comparatively well positioned to give recommendations. When it comes to sort of top of the world, current top of the world, so-called alignment research, people thinking about the long-term AI outcomes and how to kind of like make sure that things go well in the long run. The current top forum is called Alignment Forum. It's very technical though, alignmentforum.org. And then there's like a less technical one that is more general discussion is called lesswrong.com. But they are they're much less about competence. They are more about like alignment.
Yeah, I think the good way is to follow famous figures on Twitter, Facebook, like Jaan Tallinn or Yoshua Benjo, something like that. They are very famous and their opinions are important, insightful, and also I recommend you to look at the MIT Technology Review. I think that is a very good media covering broad aspect and also sometimes raising good issues.
Thanks. Any questions from the audience? Marek is there. Yeah.
By the way, if this was a brand and design panel, it would be easy, just Instagram channel what? So that would be an easy one, but this is a bit more advanced level. But Marek.
Maybe I'm provoking a little bit, but if a human brain gets a damage, so you can train it up and the other parts are kind of taking over. You mentioned GPT-3. Can GPT-3 be used like training up human brain in a different way? Because if we are using today's brain, maybe 70%, maybe more, depending of the capacity. So maybe this is kind of new level of edutech that we can train superhumans with the help of these machines, or put the monkeys in higher level than humans if we are training them in a proper way, or if GPT-3 is going to train them.
Yeah, I think there's like a more sort of general strategy of so-called kind of merging with AI, having kind of like this automated decision maker and humans complement each other. I think it kind of will work in the short term. For example, I'm chairman of a language teaching company called Linguist that has investment from Rakuten. That's like one of my reasons to come to Japan every once in a while. And like there is like an obvious thing to do is to have like AI that can figure out, that can do like a customized and tailor-made course basically for every person that is kind of data-based, etc. But like more generally, I think like the ability to kind of AI and humans complement each other is sort of temporary. And we see that in so-called advanced chess. There is this concept of chess programs that are not trained to kind of be the best in chess, but be the best complement for humans. And then like have these hybrid teams compete against each other. But the situation is that no longer humans are not adding anything. Like there is no way a human AI team can beat AlphaZero. Just no way. Humans are only making the performance worse. So I think like that is like a trendsetter. Like current regime, yep, you can do a lot of like hybrid decision making and get a lot of value, but that will last 5 years.
Yeah, of course, you can use GPT-3 or AI technologies for edutech and connecting the brain with outer devices. You can train the brain very effectively. And also, you can use the AI technologies for medical purposes. Some has the cognitive dysfunction, or maybe you can treat them using that kind of technology. But you cannot, increase the human ability 10 times, but you can very easily increase the computational capability 10 times. So AI can, grow faster, and so as just Jaan said, at the initial phase, the human can complement AI, but sooner or later, the AI will be so strong. That's my scenario.
Okay, so do we have more questions? Yeah, Martin, please. Maybe that's the last one then. We have to start wrapping up.
I'm Martin from Baltcap. Maybe just a question about this off switch. I started wondering that if you can you think of it this way, that that having an off switch is also a risk, because somebody needs to control it, and if it's a vital service, that who has the authority to guard the off switch or use the off switch, and how do you kind of regulate that? That in some cases it might be better not to have it, because then nobody can turn it off.
Okay. So sure, but I think like this is a problem that humanity already handles. In like I think the most famous with a nuclear arsenal. Like we don't have like automatic. Luckily, we don't have like automatic launch systems. There's still like kind of like a human decision making in between. So like we can just apply the current experience with systems that need to be kind of automated. I think it's a real problem. For example, like there was this like Air France crash a decade ago or so, more than a decade ago, where there was a perfectly functioning airplane that kind of crashed, and a lot of people died in the middle of Atlantic, just because the system kind of turned itself off, and the humans were just so confused at the moment they didn't understand like what they should be doing. And then just like failed to recover. So yeah, there are certainly examples of that, but I think this is not a new like novel, unprecedented problem for humans to handle.
Okay. So maybe if that you have a question.
Maybe one more.
Yeah, please. Yes.
And we have something small for you, but as we had from our LPs, for example, Omron, they presented the history of Omron and the innovations in a timeline, this kind of a horizontal. So if we once again oversimplify, and from AI we also know these kind of milestones when AI was smarter than human in chess. So if you do this kind of a guesstimate of a timeline, so brutally and simplified, the next 20, let's say 10 or 20 years, what do you think will be the timeline main steps when looking back towards this time? So for the next 5, 10, 20 years, when will something regarding AI happen? So just an oversimplification. What would you highlight, if that's okay?
It's a super difficult question. Like I mean, you can look at the like this. Yeah, like I think the best kind of research about the timelines to kind of human level AI is called I think it was like an AI timelines report by Open Philanthropy. The Open Philanthropy, like Ajaya Kotra and others, has a paper about yeah, like what is the kind of probability distribution of getting to human level AI later this century. I do think that there is like really kind of like hingy question that I have like friends on both sides who are like battling it out, including like top level deep. I think the question is, how far will the deep learning get us? Because what we see currently, deep learning is really good at replacing kind of instinctive decision making, as I think Andrew Ng or somebody put it, making decisions that humans can do in less than 100 milliseconds. What was it like? Ian Goodfellow, I think, I forget who, but an AI researcher said. Whereas like this longer deliberative process, AI isn't like super good at. Now the question is like, is that a fundamental problem with deep learning? In which case, like we get like very, very different near-term future, or is it something that deep learning will overcome as we just like throw more electrons and more data at it? But like, so yeah, if it's the first case, then yeah, I would basically expect like better and better like media generation. That's like obvious thing with the latest news about Dolly and yeah, other kind of media generations. So like having a more and more authentic depiction of events and stories that never happened. That's one thing that could be potentially very, very prominent feature of the next 5 years or so. If it turns out that AI actually kind of like clicks and starts reasoning, then we will have like much larger problems.
My prediction is that in 5 years or so, we will have a very big breakthrough on the very basic side of deep learning, and because current deep learning and the current basic function of brain is different. So there should be some other way to realize the AI function. So maybe in 5 years we will have that kind of a big breakthrough. And after that, maybe we can really realize the self-driving vehicle or many robots available in daily uses. And then maybe in 10 years also, I don't know, as I said before, the brain function can be demystified, and we can have many edutech medical technologies based on that anatomy of the brain. So I don't know the more future, but yeah, this is my guess.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have. I hope this was stimulating and gives you a lot to think about. This is one of the most pressing issues of our time and times to come, because we do need to be able to make this safely. So thank you for sharing your knowledge with us today, and let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you.